So it's so good to see you, and thank you for such a warm welcome. You know, when we met out in the hall and she told me that her grandfather, she said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I grew up on a tobacco farm in rural southeastern North Carolina, but I've worked all over North Carolina, and as a superintendent, I'm a bit like a Methodist minister. I've been all over the country, but my first superintendency was in a little place in the edge of the mountains of western North Carolina called Marion, North Carolina." And she goes, "Oh my God, that's where my grandfather was from." And so we started talking about family, and that's a great way to start any kind of relationship. Again, thank you so much for inviting me here to talk with you today about schools, about workforce preparedness, about what's going on in our country. I firmly believe that the future of America depends primarily on what goes on in its cities. Growing up in rural North Carolina, quite frankly, they're good people, there's just not enough of them. And if you're going to be a difference maker, you have to have some type of political influence. And there's no question, I say this all the time in Houston, as the Houston public schools go, so will go Houston. And as Houston and Dallas and Fort Worth and El Paso go, so will Texas. And as Texas goes and Arkansas goes, so will go America. So we know that the relationship between public education and the economic growth and development of our country is linked together whether we want it to or not. And we're excited about that in Houston, and it is a huge challenge in our city. I can promise you, the demographics are changing like you cannot believe. In Harris County, where we're located, the population that's 65 years of age or older, 68% of those folks are Anglo. Now, Anglo is a Texas word, I've realized, for white. So 65 and older, 68% are white. In 2040, it's been predicted that in Harris County, only 7% of the total population will be white or Anglo. It is shifting. The demographics of our school district right now is 62% Hispanic, about 26% African American, about 8% white, about 3%, 4% Asian, and then we have a group that we call others. We have kids from over 100 countries who speak over 100 languages as their first language. About 30% of our population are ELL students. The majority of those kids speak only Spanish, followed, believe it or not, by Middle Eastern kids and by Vietnamese. So it's a very diverse city. Houston's a very cosmopolitan area. My school district is 72% non-white. 80% of my kids are on free and reduced lunch. So we have a lot of kids from poverty. We have a lot of kids who can't speak English as a first language. But what we have is kids who have unlimited potential. And we have a uniquely wonderful opportunity to not only change their lives, but to impact Houston, Texas, America, and the world. And I believe that we have to do it student by student, community by community, and we take every single one of those students very seriously, and we know the kind of opportunity that exists. Now, I'm very proud of where we are as a school district, but I also know we have tremendous work to do. Having the highest graduation rate in the history of the school district, it's gone from like 62% to 78.5% in the last 4 years. And we're proud of that. But we're not going to be happy until it's 100% graduation rate. Our dropout rate, we've got it down to 10.5%. Used to be at 22% about 5 years ago. We're not going to be happy until not one kid drops out of school. School has to become more relevant. And if we're going to prepare kids for the future, and we think that's important, if we're going to prepare kids for the future, we have to have help. I can tell you Arkansas Learns is a wonderful concept. You guys ought to be so proud, and this state ought to be so pleased to have a third-party partner, because I can tell you as a school reformer and someone who's always has been very proud to be called a change agent, You can't do this alone. That wagon is too heavy. The horses we have are just simply not strong enough. We have to have help. That help often comes from third parties. And school superintendents, you can't be afraid of the involvement of the business community. I hear people talk all the time, oh, kids are not widgets. Kids are not widgets. Well, the business world knows that. But for us to think that we don't have things to learn, we better open our eyes. I've worked in states across this country when the biggest impediments to change were not school unions, teacher unions, even though they get blamed a lot for what's wrong. Now, I've had my times with teacher unions, and I'm not their favorite guy many times, I can tell you that. But many times they're not the problem. Many times the problems start with the school superintendents who want to maintain the status quo. They start with administrative associations who don't want to be held accountable. They start with school board members who are on the school board for personal or political gain. What we talk a lot about in Houston is Team HISD. And Team HISD is everybody in the community that's associated with or should be associated with our school district. And we think that's key. Center and front and foremost, our North Star that guides us no matter where we are or where we find ourselves is the student. Again, children have one time in school. And we have to be willing to look at what we're doing, analyze what we're doing from an educational perspective and a business perspective if we're going to do the job that needs to be done. In Houston, we don't have all the answers. We struggle mightily, but I can tell you, we do the work, and it's hard work, but it's good work and it's the right work. We need third parties to work with us. We have had most of our departments audited by teams made up of business leaders, either from Houston or from around the country. We benchmark, we travel, we try to learn from the best. Friday, I'm taking a team, we're going to New York City, and we're going to New York City because we want to study their aviation high school. There's two aviation high schools in America. One's in New York City, the other was in Washington State. We think the one in New York is the best in the country. We're going there because we have a high school in Houston that's located near Hobby Airport. We have two airports there, and you can get your pilot's license there. But when we were talking with members from our Chamber of Commerce, they were saying, that high school, your vocational technical program in that high school is just not very good. And you ought to have a vocational program that could teach kids to work on landing gears because we can't find people in Houston that has that skill set. And we started thinking about that. I brought together a group from the business community, and we sat and talked. I brought some principals in. We brought some parents in. And then I did something that was kind of unusual. We brought a group of kids in. And we talked to them about what they thought and about their future and what their future looked like. And so we've made a pretty hard decision, and it was not real popular in some places in our town. We decided that we were going to really take a very tough look at what courses we teach in our high schools, and we're going to take a tough look at our vocational education program. Our high schools in Houston were like a lot of high schools in America. You would have high schools that would have a big high school, a Little Rock Central. I don't know much about it except it's a rich history, and I think it's a fabulous place. 3,400 kids. We have about 33 high schools in Houston. Two of them have 3,400 kids in them. But what we see in a lot of our big high schools, even though it's one high school, it's not one high school at all. It's two high schools. It's high schools for the haves and the high schools for the have-nots. And so we come in, and when I got to Houston in 2009, in our 29 high schools, I had 3 high schools who offered 10 or more advanced placement courses. The others offered none, or 1, or 2. I listened to the business community. They were telling me there's such inequity around what's an A. An A at one school is not an A at another school, is not an A at another school. And the kids, they're not equally prepared. So now in HISD, all of my high schools offer a minimum of 15 advanced placement courses. It's non-negotiable. You offer 15. And if you take an AP course in Houston, you must take the AP exam because we believe in holding teachers accountable in Houston. And even in an era of cutting $100 million out of my budget 2 years ago, we pay for the AP exam. All of our kids in Houston can take the SAT on a Thursday during the school day. They don't have to find transportation on a Saturday and forget which Saturday to take it. They take it on a Saturday. We pay for the SAT. 2 of my high schools are nationally acclaimed for offering international baccalaureate programs. We pay for the IB exams. I have a 3rd high school next year. Population's primarily Latino students, handful of African Americans that go there. They have decided to become an international baccalaureate high school because of our push for rigor. Every kid in that high school will have to take at least one IB course before they graduate. That's a requirement. If you take the course, you take the exam, we pay for the exam. We expect rigor. We have been working for the last 2 years on a very interesting concept that we refer to as linked learning. We link the courses that you take in high school towards meaningful career opportunities. We work with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and with the Brookings Institute to look at and identify our major industries in the Houston area. Now, it won't surprise you, there's a lot. But the big ones are health. You all know about the Houston Medical Center, MD Anderson, Memorial Hermann. We also know, you may not know this, but Houston is one of the largest manufacturing communities in the country. And the 3rd biggie in Houston, you all know, is energy. And so we started taking a hard look at our vocational courses in Houston, and we saw that we had singleton courses. You could take a course in small engine repair in the Houston Independent School District. When I got there in 2009, you think I'm kidding you could take a course in typing. In many of my inner city schools, cosmetology was hot. Now, you go in and look at the kids who took cosmetology and graduated, and you couldn't find one in the last 4 years who went on and established a career in the cosmetology industry. We had a lot of people who believed this was all these kids could do. They had to have something that they could do with what? With their hands. And I'm not saying those kinds of skill sets are not important, but kids that have to do things with their hands also have to be able to do things with their minds. So we have looked at, and we're developing a linked learning model in Houston. We started this when I was in San Diego, California, and San Diego is also one of the 4 finalists for the Broad Award, which is the Nobel Prize in Education. And so kind of, I was there for 2 years before I came to Houston, and so I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm not going to pull for them, but if we don't win, maybe they will. And I tell my board and our staff, it's not about winning the Broad Award, even though that's a pretty prestigious honor. It's about consistently improving education for children. This linked learning is a way to detract high school. You don't have honors, you don't have this level of courses. We've eliminated in Houston in the last 3 years over 2,000 high school courses because they weren't meaningful courses. They didn't lead to anywhere. All of our vocational technical courses, we want to lead to a 2-year associate's degree or to industry certification. And they have to be aligned to the industry or the area where kids can get jobs, meaningful jobs. I don't want my kids to flip hamburgers. I want my kids to have a meaningful job where they can earn a reasonable living, have some type of 401k retirement plan, and to have some type of health services or health insurance for them and their families. So we have to have workforce developed programs. And linked learning produces, we call them pathways, career pathways in HISD. So we may have a high school that might have 5 career pathways, and they may all be, for example, in the medical careers field. So if you want to be a radiologist, here are the courses you take in high school that will lead you towards a 2-year associate's degree in radiology. If you want to be a medical records clerk, here are the courses that you take that will lead you down that pathway to medical careers. Now, the careers that we're leading you down to will lead you to a certification, and some of our kids will take enough courses that they will end up with an industry certification, and others will end up going right into a 2-year college or university. What this means is a lot of kids will take advanced placement calculus and AP physics, but they may also take welding. So you are blending vocational and technical courses along with academically rigorous courses that will prepare that kid to one day be a veterinarian. Because vets may need to know how to weld. They may need to know how to do a little sheet metal work. We want our kids prepared, and we believe that you have to blend the academics and the vocational technical education together to give kids the right kind of a future. We also in Houston have done something that's quite unique and different. I don't know a lot of people in the country that are doing this, but we have a great partnership with local community colleges. And so last year, 2 years ago, in 6 of our high schools, we established 50 different slots that 10th graders could apply to. And they were all, again, workforce prepared related areas. One's in manufacturing technology, one's in logistics. One of the areas was a pharmacy tech position. One was a computer tech position. A lot of them have to do with health careers, manufacturing, and energy. One is an associate's degree in wind and solar powered energy. So in those high schools, all the 10th graders could complete for 50 slots in those areas. When they were accepted, or when they are accepted, in summer school between the 10th and 11th grade, they have to come to summer school 2 sessions in the summer. And they take online blended learning courses offered by the community college that will count as high school and community college credit. During their junior year in high school, half their courses are taught by our teachers. The other half are taught online by community college teachers through a combination of online course, and the professor may be coming in 1 day a week doing blended learning or doing projected face-on-face distance learning type instruction. Again, after the 11th grade, another double session of summer school, taking online community college courses on their high school campus. Their senior year, again, a year of half the courses being taught by our teachers, the other half the courses being taught online through blended learning. They get a high school diploma from us, and then they come back to another dual summer session. And their senior year, 2 days a week, they're doing internships and mentoring with local businesses like UPS, like DHL, like Federal Express for the logistical associate's degree. Pharmacy, they're doing work with people called Walgreens and CVS, Sam's Club, et cetera, et cetera. After they come back and get that, again, double session of summer school following their senior year, in August they are awarded a 2-year associate's degree from the community college at no cost. And since they've done internships, they have an entree into the businesses where they can find jobs, all workforce related. That's where we're going in Houston with our vocational technical courses in our high schools. This pilot program that I'm talking about, we're getting ready to expand it, and over the next 5 years, it'll be in all of our high schools. Our vocational programs, single courses and courses that don't lead to a 2-year associate's degree are being abolished. Houston is a district of choice. The kids in Houston can choose to go to any high school, elementary, and middle school that they would like to go to. It's open enrollment. Out of our 276 schools, over 100 of them are magnet schools. If you go to a magnet school, we provide transportation. We happen to believe that choice produces meaningful, and I do mean meaningful, competition. It pushes neighborhood schools to be better because they know if they aren't better, kids will do what? Choose to go elsewhere. We tell our neighborhood principals, if a kid chooses to go somewhere else, it should be because they are particularly gifted in music, because our high school of the performing and visual arts is the best in America. It's better than the one that you saw in the movie in New York called Fame. DeBakey High School, named after a very famous Houston heart surgeon, is the best medical careers preparation school in the country. We have 11th graders there that get full scholarships to Baylor, Texas A&M, University of Texas, and to medical school in the 11th grade. It's a fabulous school. Next year, when we rebuild our 29 high schools, we're going to go on those high school campuses, and we are going to build a new high school on the sports fields. Now, we're in Texas, so we're like you in Arkansas. We can't build them on the football field, but we're going to build them on the baseball, softball field. That would be kind of sacrilegious to build them on the football field. But we're going to do that, and then we're going to move the kids over, tear the old building down, and redo the sports complex and the parking lot back behind those schools. But we've brought in experts from all over the world and all over the country to talk about 21st century high schools and how those high schools should look. And they shouldn't look like your grandfather's high school. They should be designed differently. The space should be differently. We should have classrooms in those schools the size of this classroom, because if I have an outstanding chemistry teacher across town, or if I find one in California that is just an absolute wonderful teacher, that teacher ought to be able to teach. And this room ought to be filled full of kids that could have access to that teacher's knowledge. And we should have teacher assistants around to help when that teacher gives this group of students projects to work on, because we believe project-based learning is where it's at. You go into many of our classrooms, you don't see kids lined up in single-row desks. They're at tables. They're doing cooperative learning. They're doing group projects. That's important. Now, you heard her say earlier on that our principal and our teacher evaluation instruments have student performance tied to them. They're weighted about 45% towards student performance, both principals and both our teachers. We're big into student growth. That means that we think an effective teacher is someone who grows students at least 1 year academically every year. And we use that to help us identify and reward our outstanding teachers. In Houston, we have given $136 million away in the last 4 years to our outstanding teachers. That's helped us retain 90% of our highest performing teachers. And we are very, very serious, and the teachers union gets sideways with me a little bit about this, but we're very, very serious about this, having an effective teacher in every classroom. The last 2 years, we have exited 908 low-performing teachers out of the school district. 908. And some people will say, well, you don't have a big heart. You're not empathetic. You don't care about our teachers. Yes, we do. We have some of the most meaningful staff development and training programs you ever want to see. We don't believe you can fire your way to excellence. But what we also know is if you have teachers who either will not or cannot meet our expectations around teaching children, they cannot stay, and there is no place for you to work in Houston, Texas. And that's our attitude, and that's our philosophy. And I know that's cold-hearted to some people, but I can promise you, if you are a child from an impoverished background and you come into kindergarten and you're 2 grade levels below in reading, you cannot catch up by just having an effective teacher that gets 1 year of growth per year. You've got to have a highly effective teacher for 4 years in a row. And that is almost next to impossible in many small rural communities and in urban education. Now, if you're in a private school, that's a piece of cake. But in my place, that's very tough to do. We use those value-added results also to assign teachers based on areas of strength. If we have 4 teachers in 3rd grade, and 1 teacher we see gets very high value-added results in math, but they're not real good in science, social studies, or reading, but we got another one that's good in social studies, and maybe the other one's good in science. So the math teacher just teaches all the math to the 4th grade. That way all the 4th graders get a great math teacher. Another one teaches all the social studies, so all of them get a great social studies teacher. You understand where I'm going? So we're very strategic about how we use value-added data to help us put our best teachers in front of our best kids. And we work hard at doing that. And it's something, again, that we don't have all the answers, but we're proud of. Houston is also the birthplace of KIPP charter schools, Yes charter schools, and Harmony charters. Now, some of you maybe have not heard about Harmony. They're the largest charter network in Texas, and some would argue they're the best. They fly under the radar. They're run by a bunch of Turkish business men, but I can promise you they do a whale of a job, particularly in science education. Now, KIPP and Yes also do good work. When I first became superintendent in Houston, we had a State of the District address by the superintendent, and I remember delivering it at the Hilton Americas in downtown Houston. Business leaders pay to come to that. I don't know why they pay to come to hear me talk, but they do. And we had 2,500 people there. And I created quite a stir, because on stage that day, I told the KIP and YES CEOs, superintendents, whatever they called themselves at that time. They changed sometime from time to time. But basically what I said to them is, guys, you need to buckle your chin strap because the game's on. We no longer are going to lose students to you because our schools are failing or because our schools are bad. If kids choose to go to you, it's because they feel like they're leaving one good school to another school. I'm a big supporter of choice. I'm a big supporter of KIPs and YESs and good charters. The bad ones need to be closed down this afternoon. But parents ought to have choice about where they send their kids. They ought to not be locked up, and the quality of a child's education should not be determined by that child's zip code. Now in Houston, we've got great relationships with charters. We provide the transportation for YES Prep and KIP. We save them over $1 million a year. There's a guy named Doug Lamov who's written a book, Teach Like a Champion. He's out of the Success Charters in Boston, Massachusetts. He trains in one public school district in America. It's Houston. There's a woman in New York, Eva Moscovich. She is tough, runs a charter school network there. She trains on academic rigor in one public school in District America, and it's in Houston, Texas. Michael Goldstein from the Match Charter School Network outside of Boston trains in one public school district in America, that's Houston. Now, why do you think they train in Houston and they don't train anywhere else? It's not because I'm such a charming guy, I promise you. They do it because we asked them to, and we reached out. You can't be afraid of competition. If you're looking for the cure to cancer, and we're looking for the cure to educational cancer in Houston, you can't be afraid to accept the cure if it comes from a private hospital. And you can't run from and hide from charters. You need to learn from them. I required my assistant superintendents to spend a full day at KIP and a full day at YES. I wanted to know what they were doing. Now, we love sports in Texas. We were having athletic signing day in a big room 3 times this size, and all the kids from all my high schools that were signing the college scholarships in athletics were there with their coaches and principals and the band playing, and they had on their shirts of where they were going. And one of the founders of YES Prep looked at that and they thought, that's fantastic. Maybe we ought to be doing that for something called academics. And so they started an academic signing day. And they started celebrating by saying all of our seniors were accepted into college, 100%. I thought, how in the world do you do that? And so I recruited one of their teachers away and paid them. And I said, how do y'all do that? They said, well, if they get accepted into a community college, which doesn't have an admissions requirement, that's getting into college. If they get accepted to the University of Houston downtown, which doesn't have an admissions college requirement, I said, okay. I'll bring all my principals together. So I said, look, I expect all of your kids, 100% of your seniors, to be accepted into a 4-year university. Well, how are we going to do that? I said, the same way the charters do. Let me tell you what I've learned from them. Last year in Houston, front page of the newspaper, HISD, 29% of the students in 29 high schools, 100% get accepted into college. And everybody's going, wow, isn't that great? 2 years ago, we started having something called signing day for kids who got scholarships. Where did we get the idea? The guy from YES said, you stole that idea from us. I said, we sure did. It was a great idea. Did you think that's wonderful? We got to be willing to learn from each other. The business community, you got to engage the business community. Business leaders don't accept less. If they won't engage you, push yourself on them. Don't take no for an answer. The Greater Houston Partnership has a political action wing, and they basically interview school board members. And they raise money and they support board members that they think are reform-minded, not status quo. They don't care about, they don't want status quo. The schools have got to get better year in and year out, year in and year out. They can't stay the same. If the schools stay the same, you're going backwards. It's like riding a bicycle. You either move forward or you're falling off. Schools don't have training wheels. They just don't. And you have to be aggressive, and you have to be strong, and you have to be tough-minded. This is not easy work. I tell my friends all the time, you know, as a school superintendent, your friends come and go. Your enemies accumulate. They accumulate. I remember seeing a Gary Larson cartoon in the paper many years. It's been about 4 years ago, I guess. And what was fascinating about this is that it was a bunch of French legionnaires, and they were assaulting this castle out in the middle of the desert. Oh my gosh, you should have seen them. They were all spread out. The horses and camels were spread-legged out, and their arrows filled with everybody. Wounded French Foreign Legion and dying people all over the cartoon. And there was two guys. They were hiding behind the camel, and they were looking at each other, and one of them said, "Do you think that this big defeat had anything to do with our new uniforms?" And all the soldiers and these two guys' uniforms have bullseyes on the front and on the back. And I remember looking at that, and I thought, these guys are dressed just like school superintendents. You know, you walk around with these great big bullseyes. And that's a big part of it, but that has to be okay to us. It has to be okay. But for superintendents and school board members and others in education, you can't do this work alone. And that's why people like this wonderful group here are so important. And I would hope that you continue to push hard in your state assembly. Texas this year, I pushed really, really hard, lobbied very, very hard, didn't have a lot of help from my other superintendents in the state, but we convinced the Texas legislature to approve a new law which will allow school systems in Texas to treat the bottom 15% of their lowest performing schools the way charter schools do. We can operate under the same state charter laws as KIPP and YES do. Because my principals were constantly complaining, well, if I could do this and if I didn't have to put up with that law, you don't understand how I could do this and do that. I got tired of it. I said, well, if that's all it takes, maybe that's a better, easier solution than we think. So we lobbied and we got it changed. We're going to see next year how much difference it makes. Real quick in closing, when I first came to Houston in 2009, I got a letter from the Commissioner of Education. And he told me that he was getting ready to take over 4 of our high schools and 5 of our middle schools for academic failure. Now, I don't think in Arkansas that happens. You might have schools taken over because they financially can't manage themselves, but I doubt anybody in Arkansas has ever faced state takeover. What's interesting about it was it gave the district 4 choices. You could lock the door and the kids couldn't go back to these 9 schools. That's option A. Option B, you could put programs in. Well, we'd already tried that, and that hadn't worked. Option C is you could turn them over to charter networks. Well, I called KIPP and YES, and they didn't want to take them because they don't do turnarounds. They start from scratch with the lowest grade, and they build them year by year by year because that helps you establish the right culture. And they just didn't do that at that time. So the other option was for us to do a turnaround model, working with Dr. Roland Fryer, third-party, outside person, from Harvard University. Roland had done all this research around what works in good charter schools. What he found was good charter schools had great principals, they had a great teacher in every classroom, high expectations, culture of high expectations, more time, and data-driven instruction. In those 9 secondary schools, we fired all the principals and assistant principals. All the teachers had to reapply for the job. We replaced up to 80% of the teachers in most of those schools. We added an hour to the school day. We added 2 weeks to the school year. We put in a data-driven model of instruction. And we told all of our principals we expect 100% graduation and no dropouts in 3 years or you won't be here. Plain and simple. We paid signing bonuses to teachers going into those schools. We paid recruitment bonuses to principals going to those schools, and we have worked ourselves silly. And we've made a lot of progress. None of those 9 schools now are our lowest performing high schools or middle schools. One of them was featured last year on a Frontline special that showed up on national television. It was phenomenal. 2 years ago, we added 11 elementary schools to that mix. And so we have something we call Apollo 20. There's no question in my mind that it's been very successful. By the way, our foundation in HISD, which had raised about $55,000 the year before I came, raised almost $18 million to fund that program. Now, the 3-year pilot's up, and this year, our board, I believe, we have the votes that they'll fund it out of local dollars. A lot of this has to do with how you spend money. It doesn't necessarily require more money. I eliminated 700 central office positions when I came to Houston. We eliminated $7.5 million in time and a half overtime. You have to be tough to make those kinds of decisions because people that were getting that time and a half overtime, they like getting it. We had some people that were earning twice their salary by doing that. We redirected those dollars to spend those dollars where kids are. We have trained all the principals in Houston to develop positioning statements for their schools. We have a strategic plan for our district. We focused on 3 areas, and we define those areas by talking to our business leaders, by talking to our parents and our students. What they said to us is we want safe schools. We want schools where kids read on grade level, and we want schools where kids can compute. And so we have, by going back and looking at our budgets, our school budgets, and we give money to principals based on a weighted student formula. If your school has more disadvantaged kids, more kids who speak English as a first language, you get more money. And you can spend it any way you want. I have a high school with 9 assistant principals and no guidance counselors. It's called site-based decision-making. They decide what they want to do. They decide what kind of software program they use or what kind of curriculum that they use in their schools. Site-based decision-making. But we trained our principals to make sure that your school budget is aligned to your biggest area of need. Next year, in our school district, we have redirected at the school level, without any influence from me or pressure from my staff, our principals redirected over $17 million to focus on reading, to focus on math, to focus on school safety. It's not so much needing more money, it's having the courage to spend the money that you have wisely. I could sit here and talk to you about what we're doing forever. We don't have all the answers. I promise you we don't. But we are bold, we are creative, and we're proud of that. Next year, we're opening 2 more magnet schools for our parents. This past year, we opened a Mandarin Chinese immersion school because we had a group of parents and business leaders wanting our kids to speak Chinese. We are a big export with energy in China, and business leaders came to me and said, look, Terry, we need kids who can speak Chinese, Mandarin. I said, we'll fix that for you. We can open a magnet school. It's a kindergarten through 8th grade school. When those kids leave the 8th grade, they're going to be fluent. And then when they go to high school, we're going to teach at least 2 courses per year during their 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in Chinese. So if they take biology, it'll be taught in Chinese. So they aren't taking Chinese, they're going to be taught in Chinese. We're opening a middle school magnet. We had a school in Houston that was failing. It used to have 1,000 kids in the middle school. When I went there, we were losing 3,000 kids between the 5th grade and the 6th grade because we weren't listening to parents in terms of what they wanted in the middle schools. That's stopped now. We are opening we stopped and closed a failing, a low-performing middle school that was down to 288 kids. We reopen it next year. It's going to start with grade 6, and then we'll add 7, then we'll add 8 the next year, and it's going to be the Baylor School of Medicine Middle Grades Academy that'll help feed into this great high school that we have. And we already have over 400 applications from all over the city for the 6th grade. Next year, we're opening the country's first energy high school, and we're starting it with grade 9. And then grade 10, 11, and 12. By the way, we're asking our friends in the business community to raise $28 million to help us build that school. And it's something that I believe we can get done. We don't have the answers, but what we know is if we'll listen, there's others that do. We may listen to KIPP, we may listen to YES, we may listen to charters. We certainly listen to our kids, to our parents. This next year, we are surveying every parent, every student, and every teacher in the Houston Independent School District. We're spending over $3 million to hear what our people have to say about where we are and where we need to go. We listen and we learn from our business community. And without the business community's voice, there is no way to redesign your workforce preparation to where it will be meaningful to your kids and to your community. Thank you guys for letting me be with you.